three of us are coaches and corporate executives turned entrepreneurs, like probably many of you that are here. So we're glad that you're here. And if, as you're joining, drop a quick note to say hello in the chat and tell us where you're calling in from or where you're watching from. And while you're at it doing this, tell us, have you ever felt like, despite everything you've accomplished in your life, you still wonder if you really belong to whatever you're doing? And if so, type me, M-E, in the comments. And I'm gonna have to repeat this because not everyone's here yet, but remind me to do that, Jen and Caroline.
Yeah.
So let's see, as people are coming in. I don't want to start doing everything, and you guys can wait a little if you don't mind. As people,
maybe we just give them a couple minutes to get
we'll give them a minute.
And we can jump in.
Okay. Let's see the chat. We're also, by the way, live on YouTube. We're live on LinkedIn. So excited to do this. And if you missed this for some reason, it's going to be recorded. So you'll always go back to it and see what you missed. So we're doing an upcoming 3-day webinar in February. And we just thought that if you guys had questions, we could start putting into the chat box as well. So just to give you a little preview of what we're talking about this imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome doesn't just affect mid-level managers or people who are stepping into a new role. It really confronts chief executives, high-level performers, high-level leaders like yourselves, entrepreneurs, pretty much anyone who keeps pushing the boundaries of what's possible, right? That's kind of how I look at it, because if you're pushing the boundaries, you also, I've never done this before, and am I really equipped to do that? So if you've ever had that nagging voice inside of you, in the back of your head, questioning whether you really deserve to be where you are, well, you're in good company. I don't mean that in a bad way.
And a lot of times we look at imposter syndrome as and let me jump back. I'm Caroline Avinger, and I'm really glad to be here. Thank you, 𝗏𝗲, for setting it up.
Sure.
It manifests itself in a couple of different ways, and we think that it's a really overt feeling that just you have, which is part of the problem of imposter syndrome. We think we're the only one experiencing it, when in fact, for example, a 2020 KPMG study explained that out of 750 female executives that they interviewed, 75% had experienced imposter syndrome at some point along their careers. Right. So it's out there with lots of people experiencing it. And it's not, just to clarify, solely limited to female entrepreneurs or female executives. It is regardless of gender, race, background, your level of success. It can rear its ugly head really at any point in your career, especially when you're moving into new roles, new positions, leadership roles in particular. And, perfectionism is one of the things we see affecting it. And high achievers often set those high, really sometimes unrealistic goals, and every I must be dotted, every T must be crossed. I must check, double check, and triple check to make sure that my work is perfect. Otherwise, I'm not valid.
That's right.
It's so interesting because I think, I was also reading in another survey about imposter syndrome, how even like 33% of those leaders who are early in their career, I think this was a Korn Ferry study done last year, 33% of those that are early in their career are also experiencing imposter syndrome. And I think what you shared, Caroline, is so important because I think, as leaders or even individual contributors, I would suspect this crosses all boundaries, right? Like there are no boundaries with this. Right. But I think there's this fear, right? To your point, if we're not perfect, if we don't do all the things that we're asked to do, then somehow it's going to diminish our value and our ability to do the role that we're in. And as I've thought about this myself, coaching different leaders who are experiencing imposter syndrome, I've reflected on my own corporate career journey as I was up and coming as a leader. And I can remember early in my leadership career, I was a frontline leader. And we were in the middle of a pretty major restructure. This was during the recession, 2008, 2009. And we were removing work from a particular regional office and bringing all that work into my team. And we weren't getting any extra headcount, right? We were going to have to do all the work that team was doing on top of what we were already doing. And I remember coming back from a trip where I was at the regional office talking through transition, and my boss walked by my desk and it was all over my face. I was completely overwhelmed. I'd never managed, any kind of transition to this size. And so she pulled me to the side, and I was afraid to say, hey, I need help, right? Because I didn't want it to make her feel like I couldn't handle it or that I couldn't complete the objective that I was given. And it was actually quite the opposite. She wanted to help me. And I think this is the mistake that a lot of leaders make, is that they're afraid to be honest about what they're experiencing or feeling because they don't want it to diminish what they bring to the table, or their leader to think differently of them. And it was quite the opposite in my experience. I mean, my leader helped me. We worked through it. She brought in other resources. And so it's actually in these moments, these are opportunities for us to not have to shoulder the burden ourselves, and create some opportunity for others to step up and help. So I think many times this fear of what other people will think is what holds us back.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I was going to say, among three of us here, we have over 75 years of corporate experience, hands-on, handling all sorts of, situations, as some of, this, what you've been sharing, Caroline and Jennifer. It's like, we want to unpack why high achievers struggle with this. As you were saying, Caroline, there is potentially a reason for that, right? Why is it that, the idea is, how do we take control before it sabotages our success, right? Because so if you ever had that moment when someone gives you praise, and instead of owning it, you say, you brush it off. Oh, well, I just got lucky. You know what they say, right place, right time. Well, if that's you should type guilty in the chat, because that's what that is. We're going to break it down and show you how to move past it.
Well, and Raju, last week when I did my appearance on the news here in Greenville about accepting compliments, and sometimes you just say thank you.
Yes.
And accepting the compliment, accepting the accolade does not make you arrogant.
Correct.
It's expressing gratitude, but it's also, humility is a great trait. But if you take it too far, then you start really undercutting other people's opinions of you and your success. But oh no, I was just lucky. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
I had a client years ago who stood up in front of a group and said, I know that there were other people more qualified than I am, but thank you for thinking I can do this job. I'm like, whoa. You not only denigrated yourself, but you've also denigrated the people who saw the promise and the potential and the skill sets, and basically insinuated that, y'all are idiots to do this. So there are a lot of things going on there that imposter syndrome can create. And maybe you think you're being humble, but you're really undercutting not only yourself, but the people around you. So look at it as, okay, thank you. That's a win for me. Put it in that file, that list, that notebook, journal, whatever it is, of where you keep those wins, to remind yourself, I am qualified. I do have the skill set to be here. And like you said, it's a lot of times those high achievers, and they realize, oh, I'm stretching here. If I have to stretch, then maybe that means I'm not good enough.
Right.
No, it means you're stretching. You're going past what your skill set is to learn and to grow. And that's an important part of it as well.
Yeah. It's so interesting because as I've worked with different leaders, and even, again, reflected on my own career, in a corporate leadership type role, there's this, I think we play this, it's a mind game, right? And this is where imposter syndrome can be really sneaky, right? Because we don't always recognize this as imposter syndrome, but when we have those thoughts in our mind, like we're supposed to be like everybody else, we see people around us being successful, regardless of if we're just coming into our new position or we've been in there for a while. We think that if we're not doing exactly like everybody else, then we're not good enough, or we're not, we're not doing the right things. And I think a lot of times what happens is it really stifles people from sharing what they do know, right? We're not supposed to be like everybody else. That's the beauty of bringing in people from different experiences and different perspectives. That diversity of thought is a real value in a leadership team, or any team for that matter. And you want to create those opportunities. But many times I think we hesitate to share.
Right.
Because we have a different perspective than everybody else in the room. But I think that's where it's the most impactful. I'll never forget, years ago, I was in my first leader roles in corporate. And it was the first time I'd ever participated in a 360-degree feedback. And there was one comment on there that I'll never forget. And they said, "I wish Jennifer would speak up more in meetings." And and that really struck me, because I'm the type of person, I don't want to share something if I don't feel like it's meaningful or helpful.
Right.
A lot of times I'm processing what I'm hearing. And I know a lot of leaders who are like that. But I was letting that kind of stop me from sharing my own thoughts in the broader meeting or what have you. So I really took that to heart and started to become more intentional about sharing. And what I found is that people do want to hear what I had to say. And I think that's true of all of us, right? Like we bring a different perspective, a unique, something we see that everybody else doesn't. And, maybe you should share it, because maybe it helps make the decision better or more thorough or whatever the case is. But many times I think we hold back because we're not like everybody else, and we think we're supposed to be.
Yeah. And that's when you're falling into that comparison trap, and, looking at, maybe you don't think like everyone else. And that's the beauty of your presence in that room, in that meeting, in that role, because it's giving something that is different and perhaps a solution that hasn't been thought of in the past. And so often we compare it to other people, they all have it figured out clearly because they're saying this, and my idea is over, on some other plane. And it's social media has a lot to do with that. I think we compare ourselves to each other, and we're only seeing part of the story and not all the work that went behind it, or that they too have doubt. So why not speak up? And Raju, I think I might have jumped in and something.
Oh, no. Nothing. I was just saying that I'm always a student of life. So I go back to why because this is a societal issue. This is a real work issue, and it's prevalent in the corporate environment, as we all kind of know. And we were part of it. So we know we had this too. And we've had it occasionally here as well. So what causes that? I think it's much deeper, because when you go back to our childhood and look at what you were supposed to, I shouldn't put down the Catholic schools, but I went to Catholic schools back in they were missionary schools, actually, a little bit different than what you might be considering parochial schools in this country. But it's just, if we didn't submit the homework fully, you would get caned or you would get punished. And if you raise your hand and you said that's the wrong thing, or I'm asking a different question and you answered you asking the wrong question off topic, you were either punished or made to sit out, or you were so embarrassed that you would never bring that up again. I'm saying it stays with us, right? So it's the same thing with some of our deeper relationships, whether our parents who said something and it just stays with us. I'm not saying that this is everybody, but I'm just simply saying for me, it's been, the more you look back as to why as a society we do this, because we've been programmed to not speak up in certain situations. And of course, the extreme is not appropriate either. But this is endemic to the whole world at this point. There are certain societies in this world, they dare not speak up in front of an older a person or a teacher or parent. So we have to examine why we do the way we do. So I think you have to look at yourself and say, okay, why am I behaving the way I do? And it's showing up in my, lack of promotion or lack of this and lack of ability to trust myself.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right, Raju. I think it's about being self-aware and recognizing when we're feeling these things, or when these thoughts are coming up in our mind, like you said, Caroline, I'm just here because of luck, right place, right time, right? I got this position. It wasn't because of anything I've done or earned. It's because of these other factors. So it is important to recognize when those thoughts come to mind, but where they come from. And, to what you're sharing, Raju, I think a lot of times it is based on our past experiences.
Yes.
So I remember coaching someone last year, and it was so eye-opening to me. And they were sharing how they didn't want to share feedback with their leader because of a poor experience they'd had with a previous employer. So if someone has tried to pitch an idea to their leader and been kind of dismissed or not recognized for the innovation or just, hey, great thinking out of the box, even if it's not something that you end up doing, but that receptivity, if people don't receive that, then that stays in their mind and it says, you know what, I'm just not going to share anything. I'm just not going to speak up. I mean, these are real things that people experience.
Well, I'm a perpetrator of that because I received that kind of feedback or lack of or criticism. I would not speak up. And then when I was the boss of that certain situation, I would put people down because I learned that. Mm-hmm. And then you realize this isn't helping them or the firm or the company or me. And it took a while. So the realization comes from either you get coached or some other person, sits you down and say, now, what was the reason for you to put that, Jane down in the meeting? Well, because that was just useless. I say, oh, you're the custodian of all the great ideas, Raju. So anyway, I'm just adding a little spice here.
But it does, but it makes a difference, right? Like we do internalize those things when they're happening, whether it's good or bad.
Yes, exactly.
And there's so many ways of combating it, which we'll be talking about week after next. But a couple of quick things to think about is in those situations when someone has sort of boxed you in and told you, we don't think out of the box or dismissed your ideas, is really revisiting the conversation and what was going on there. Was there something else going on? It goes back to that self-awareness, Jennifer, of that was actually a valid idea. And practicing speaking up, even when you have faced that from an employer or a manager or even just another team member, is part of it's just building a little bit thicker skin, a little bit more resilience to say, I'm going to do it again and see what happens. And it's almost like that mindset of just throwing the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, but make sure that what you're throwing out there is based on your experience, your expertise, and don't let someone come along and just totally dismiss that. Really recognize, have that way of reminding yourself. We see the walls of diplomas and accolades in people's offices, and that's a great reminder of yes, I deserve to be here and my voice deserves to be heard.
Right.
And I think something else that's really helpful too, just in that same vein, is to remember those moments when we have done something really well, right? Like when we know we did a great job or we received really positive feedback or, and whether it's, putting it in a file, like you mentioned, Caroline, or recording it. Like I used to do this years and years ago where I would record on a monthly basis. What are the things that I've accomplished this month? And it was more for helping me remember when I did my yearly performance review. So I would remember all the things, right? But there's a lot of value in that because it's a helpful reminder to say, wow, I really have done a lot. I've done some really good things. I am making a difference. And it's really important that we don't forget those moments.
Yes.
Or if someone came up to you and gave you some really valuable feedback, like write it down. It's not being, prideful, or it's about recognizing that yes, you do bring something unique to the table. You are making a difference. And I do agree, it's that practice is what really helps. That practice of whatever the thing is that's holding you back, whether it's speaking up in meetings or giving presentations or giving feedback, right? This is something that really holds a lot of leaders back because they're afraid to give the feedback that's really needed.
Right.
Whatever that thing is, it's about the repetition and the consistency and the intentionality, because that's really what's going to help you break through and break away from those thoughts in your mind that are really, again, sabotaging your ability to really shine and showcase your talent. And when you do that practice over and over, it not only builds your confidence, but it helps you learn how to do it better. And you start developing other skills along the way and probably building some good rapport and relationships with other people that you would be missing out on if you didn't take the chance.
Hey guys, we're going to leave the audience with some points to reflect on the first part you just went through. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've pulled up something else real quick. Um,
All
so
right.
looking at going forward, look at the triggers, look at what's causing you to feel that way.
Right.
Look at your past experience, and be realistic about it. Don't just immediately go into, I was just lucky. Okay, no, you didn't get hired because you were lucky. You got hired, or you got promoted, you got moved into this role because someone saw something there that perhaps you're
Right.
unwilling to look at, or perhaps you think, okay, I'm going to be humble about this. I don't want to say that's why. Going back to that client that I had who just said, I don't know why they did this. Really? Let's take a look realistically at what you have accomplished, and create a checklist. Have something like that in mind. Go ahead and start that list today. Pull out a piece of paper, pull out your notes app, and start listing. These are the things that I bring to the table, to remind yourself when those thoughts start creeping up
Right.
that, yeah, I am here for a valid reason.
Right. Okay. Jennifer?
No, I was just going to say that the only other thing I was going to make a comment on is around, like, when we do make a mistake, or we do have a failed experience, right? To remember, it's not about being perfect,
Yeah.
right? It's about learning from those experiences. I'm a real believer that if we're going through a challenge or an obstacle, there's probably something we need to learn in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's about, again, reframing is a big part of this, because imposter syndrome is about it's a mindset.
That's right.
Right. And so I think it's really about reframing those challenges, those mistakes as, okay, what worked well? What can I do differently? How do I take this going forward to become better, the better version of myself?
Yeah.
Instead of really letting it take a hit to your self-worth because it's not.
Yeah.
And can I just jump in with one more thing?
Sure.
We touched on this briefly at the beginning, and we'll develop it further in our next live, as well as in the workshop that we're hosting week after next. But that idea of perfectionism, and of having to have everything just right, either before you say something or before you create something, having all those all variables are under control. That's not real world. And it also can cause us to say, this has to be perfect, so I'm not sharing this with anyone until I'm able to put it out there myself.
Right.
And it turns into really a burnout potential situation. So consider how you are holding on to things that you shouldn't, that are not necessarily your responsibility to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And think about changing up your delegation, but also, like Jennifer said, reframing. Just because your name is on it, there need to be other hands in there assisting you, so that you don't eventually burn out.
And humility is about not doing it alone anyway, right? Because you know that we're in this together somehow. If there's a mission in our organization that everybody's aligned to, we're all cogs in the wheel working to make it happen. You play a role, but you can't be the sole driver of all the outcomes, because you need everybody
Right.
else to help you figure that out. So credit is also another one. So you have this credit. Oh, I did that, but it's not really about that. And how many amazing leaders are out there when they're receiving an award or some recognition, thank their stars, thank you, mom and dad, for well, your team. The great leaders talk about the team, and they say, this is a symbol of an award that I'm receiving because all the people that helped me get here. And so this is, so that's we all know that how that feels when someone gives you that sort of credit. So we had another thing to talk about, which was there are a couple other things, but competence and confidence, et cetera, where, you want to touch on that, and then I'll jump in, Jen or Caroline.
Sure. Yeah, I think many times there's this correlation. If you're confident, then you must be competent. That's not always the case, right? Like, some people are really confident in what they, but again, the skills, the experiences, right, that they may be joined or they might not be. But sometimes, the opposite is true too. Just because you lack confidence doesn't mean you're not competent.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, in particularly, we see imposter syndrome flaring up around transition or promotion. there can be a lot of feelings when, like, you feel like you're doing all the right things and you're getting positive feedback, but you're not progressing. Sometimes that can create doubt in yourself as well.
Sure. I mean, my experience, I was just over 30 years old, and I was invited by Morgan Stanley, the big Wall Street firm, and it wasn't that big at the time, to be their global head of risk and controls. And I was a rising leader at Pricewaterhouse, where I used to work as a CPA. I go, why do they want me? Who am I to run their thing? I don't know anything about that company. But you see, I had to ask them to articulate to me, why do you want me? And until I got the answer with 5 or 6 different C-level people that I was being asked to, they were like wooing me to come. It occurred to me that until someone said, we need your experience at such and such client that you've had. So it's very specific, but that you have a perspective that we all don't. And I go, and I'm telling myself, how the hell am I going to deliver it? I'm a manager, senior manager in my company, and I'm going to be a partner someday, but I don't know everything. And they say, you do just what we need. And anyway, long story short, I took the job, and I could feel fish out of water in the beginning. And I was being paid like 40% more money from where I was coming. And it was that my boss at the time gave me that confidence that I'm here with you. We're going to sink together, swim together. I understand where you're coming from. And it was like, you sometimes need that honest communication to say, okay, don't worry about it. I'm here with you. Now that's a leader that was useful at the time. And then of course, fast forward, I was telling you the story about when I made managing director, which is the highest rung you can get to on Wall Street as far as, being a partner. 18 years later, after I joined that first job, for 3 previous years, I just couldn't understand why I wasn't being promoted from that director level to that thing. And then my boss at the time, he was the next CEO of the company, said, I didn't know you were looking to be managing director. I go, huh? What am I here for? So it's just making that clear. And once you make that clear, you're gunning for it, is how then things, get sort of mobilized for you to achieve that. But it still took 2 extra years to get there. But it was like, how could this person, my boss, not know that I'm interested in being promoted? But sometimes it's just speaking up. So back to the confidence point, Jennifer, it's like, I felt competent, and I didn't feel as confident in that case. But subsequently, and having now launched my own business the last 20 years, I know that the most powerful 3 words in the English dictionary when it comes to learning are I don't know. And when you start to say I don't know about whatever it is you want to learn about, it opens up so many ways in your mind to be receptive to things that you never heard of before. Now, that doesn't mean you don't know anything, but it just means you don't know about the topic or that particular subject in depth. But if you're open to it, you can say confidently, just because you say I don't know doesn't mean you're not confident. It just means you're confident that you don't know. And now you're able to receive it to make yourself competent, right? Yeah. Sorry, I'm playing with words here because I'm a wordsmith, but.
Well, and if you look at it, I don't know, and throw that but in there. I'm going to find out. I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow with this. Yes. That really can help take you out of the imposter syndrome, and also take you out of that lack of confidence. I may not know this, but by golly, the next time I talk to you, I'm going to be where I need to be. And
glad you said that. My mentor Brendan said that, and I should have added that, but it's like, glad you did that, because like confidence means I don't know, but I'll figure it out. I think that's a great reminder. So the tyranny of how, as we call it. I know my why, but I don't know how I'm going to get it done, and we don't get started. And the thing is, the how is the difficult part, but don't let that hold you back, because you'll bob and weave and you'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that's the confidence.
Yeah. So I think we're coming to the end of this, aren't we?
I think so.
Yeah, we've got about a minute.
So we had asked earlier if people want to put something in the chat about, guilty, you have the same syndrome, or me, I'm the same way. What topics or any particular subject you want us to deep dive into, because we're doing another live like this next week, Thursday at a different time, I think. Thursday, 11:30 Eastern. So Thursday, 11:30, if you are able to, you have all our links in this event, message us, DM us to ask us anything to go into deeper in that event. And then also we have this, what Caroline referenced earlier, is that we're doing a 3-day workshop the week after next. So look out for those things. I think we've already talked about it in our posts. So be ready, send questions, send your comments, and whatever else you want us to deep dive into.
Yeah. And just remember that when it comes to imposter syndrome, you're not alone in that. There are so many people out there who experience it at any given time. And it's how you choose to respond to it. And we're going to give you some guidance and some insight on how you can respond to it.
Got it. All right, folks. Have a great weekend. It's Friday, and enjoy your time, and then we'll see you next week.
Great.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye. That felt good.
Okay, so my niece